Digenova, Trump won't testify in bad faith, Mueller witch hunt by Christina Layla for thegatewaypundit.com. Former personal attorney for Trump, Joe Digenova, said the president will not testify in Mueller's corrupt bad faith investigation. Fox News, Joe Digenova, former Trump personal lawyer and U.S. attorney, said Sunday that the president will not agree to be interviewed by special counsel Robert Mueller in his Russia collusion probe because it has developed into a bad faith investigation. So we can watch the video clip here instead of me reading what they're saying.
For full disclosure, as always, he has done some legal work for me in the past. He and his wife, Victoria, attended my radio show Christmas party, and we did share drinks together, and we talked and we laughed. Good to see you, sir.
You too.
You know, so much news was made in that interview.
Indeed.
And you saw the coverage. Let's start there. Your reaction. What does it say? What does it say to the American consumer about the news industry in general in this country?
Well, I think when you take a look at the White House Correspondents' Dinner and the conduct of the people there, and when you look at the absence of coverage of something so major as your show last night, it's pretty clear, Sean, that you're right. American journalism is dead. It's dying. It's in a coffin. And the fact is, these people are not journalists anymore. They're people with an agenda. They want to prove something. They don't want to find something out. They want to say something on their own. And this is an example of it. It's really a sad day, a sad, sad day.
Joe, we've had massive surveillance abuse,
Yes.
Unmasking abuse. We've had the leaking of raw intelligence, Samantha Power unmasking a person a day. And then we have the bigger scandal. Rudy Giuliani is right. Hillary committed felonies. Hillary obstructed justice. James Comey, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Andrew McCabe, and Loretta Lynch, they rigged that investigation. Then, of course, there's supposed to be Trump-Russia collusion. It turns out Hillary is paying a foreign national to use Russian sources that turn out to be debunked, and then that false political document, that dossier, is used for a FISA warrant to spy on an American associated with the Trump campaign in the lead up to an election. They're virtually silent on the biggest abuse of power scandal in the history of the country.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that judgment you've just made is absolutely correct. It is quite evident now that the Mueller probe is illegitimate. This effort to attempt to interview the President of the United States has now reached the point where there's just no doubt at all that the President should refuse to be interviewed by them. And that's because it's clear that Mueller and his team of Democratic thugs are acting in bad faith. They know that the president, under Department of Justice rules, cannot be indicted. They have no evidence to indict him. The office of Robert Mueller was created by Rod Rosenstein illegally. He mentioned no crime to be investigated. All of this leads to the ultimate conclusion that the perpetuation of this investigation by Mueller is doing grave damage to the United States. It's doing grave damage to United States foreign policy. It's doing grave damage to U.S. law enforcement because of the thug-like tactics that have been used in the Manafort case and in the Cohen case. And it points to something that really is disturbing. After watching the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Rod Rosenstein, accuse Congress of trying to extort him and others in the department by conducting legitimate constitutional oversight, I would say that between Mueller and Rosenstein and the absent Attorney General, God bless him, we have a very serious crisis in American federal law enforcement.
Oh, I agree. And I think it's the biggest abuse of power, corruption scandal in our history. Let's stay on Rod Rosenstein a second. Rod Rosenstein wrote a letter, said the FBI could never recover if James Comey stayed at the helm. So he would be a witness on that part of it.
Correct.
We've also discovered that Rod Rosenstein, we talk about the FISA applications that relied on unverified, uncorroborated, a dossier paid for by Hillary Clinton. They never told the judge it was paid for by Hillary. And then he went on to say that if there are false information presented to a FISA court, there's serious consequences. Isn't he implicating himself? The same statement when he said that he's not going to be extorted?
Of course, the problem here for Rod Rosenstein is he has multiple conflicts of interest. He shouldn't be supervising this case. He wrote the memorandum that led to the firing of James Comey. He signed the FISA applications. He continues to know and personally care about Comey and Mueller and others. He should be removed from this case. This is absolutely disgraceful. And now he will pretend that he is above all of this. But when all is said and done, Mr. Rosenstein represents a part of the department that I thought we had lost a long time ago when the Obama administration people left office, but apparently they haven't left office.
Joe, we're headed for a showdown, and that is every attorney that I know says the president should never sit with Robert Mueller, Andrew Weissman, his pit bull with his atrocious track record, his team of Democratic donors only, and if the showdown goes down and the president says no, if they won't agree to proffer written answers to legitimate questions, which I don't think they will at this point, then that means that it's likely that Robert Mueller will then subpoena the president of the United States before a grand jury. Yeah. This is where it gets somewhat legally a little bit tricky. Let's walk down that road. What happens when, and what should the response be?
Well, first of all, I think that if Mueller issued a subpoena to the president, it would be an unconstitutional subpoena. Since he knows the president cannot be indicted, and since he knows that the president is not a necessary witness to anything that he is investigating, it is clear that he would be using the grand jury subpoena for only one reason: to get testimony from the president to use in an impeachment recommendation report to the Deputy Attorney General. That is an illegal use of a grand jury subpoena. The president should resist it. They should take it all the way to the Supreme Court, because under Article 2 of the Constitution, all executive power rests in the President of the United States. He had ultimate authority to fire James Comey, and he did.
And if the courts make the wrong decision,
of course, the courts can always be wrong.
We know that.
But it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court if he issues a subpoena. Let me make a prediction. Mueller will never issue a subpoena.
Why?
Because he cannot win. I disagree with some of the comments of Judge Napolitano earlier about the fact that Mueller will win ultimately on a subpoena. Let me just say this. Mueller will lose ultimately on a subpoena because it is unconstitutional.
If it was granted and the president pled the fifth, then they would offer him immunity, and then the perjury trap remains. Correct or not?
That is technically correct, but you cannot issue immunity to someone when you are doing it illegally under the statute, because the only reason he would be giving him immunity would be to force testimony for an impeachment report. Mueller does not have the authority to issue an impeachment report, and he does not have the authority to use a grand jury subpoena to get presidential testimony for impeachment or any other criminal activity that never occurred, because he's dealing with the power of the president to fire people. So if Mueller wants to have that fight and tie it up in the courts for 6 months to a year, he can do it, but he will be doing a grave disservice to himself, because at this point, Mueller has become a cross between Madame Defarge and Inspector Javert, and it's an embarrassment.
All right, Joe Digenova, always appreciate you being on the program.
There you go. Absolutely. Digenova is great. Too bad he couldn't be on the case there, but he's amazing. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and again, thank you so much for watching.